Let's look at our photos of Prescott. This is him when he was in Skull and Bones. He's a young man at Yale. And so in comparing these faces, I look at the philtrum, the forehead shape, the width of the eyes, the brow, and the nose. Can I rule out that these are the same man based on an analysis comparing these two photos? I cannot rule that out. Okay, now we take a look at George Bush Sr., aka George Scherf Jr., aka Curious George. A fine young man when he was in Yale, like his father. Now comparing the photos. Photo quality here is fairly poor. I guess one obvious commonality that does pop up is the heaviness of the eyebrow ridge in each of them. But you see, this individual's haircut is clean and held back with grease, which is not the case here. That in itself doesn't rule out the connection. I note there are high cheekbones in each of these individuals. And maybe you may say there's a commonality in the neck and Adam's apple appearance. Now, briefly, on Reinhard Gehlen, I mentioned that this was potentially an issue. He was a German lieutenant general and intelligence officer with a date of birth of April 3rd, 1902. So depending on if you believe the 1938 date, that would make him 36 in this picture, or 27 if you go with the date my source gave me. So now I compare a photo of him in the 1940s, just years later from this, and I'm just not sure. I think this is like more of a fat, chubby person than this person here, but it could have something to do with a poor resolution of this image. I do note that the forehead slopes back in this certain way, the way the forehead slopes there. So that is a similarity. The nose is long, so I won't rule out that these photos could be considered similar, but it just seems like there's a bigger chin there than what this guy seems to have. The neck is short in both individuals. Okay, so briefly we have Martin Bormann, who was a German in-party official and basically Hitler's private secretary who controlled access to the man. Born 1900. And here he is in a picture, allegedly. And so we have an SS-era young Bormann, and then the Martin Bormann from that photo. And I don't know if it's just you guys, but to me, he just seems a little bit too young here. One thing I noticed, there is a receded hairline. This is a big forehead man, and this is also a big forehead man. But it's something about this aspect here with the eyes appears to be a bit too youthful. But then again, you have to also account for the very poor image quality here. This is supposed to be a 38-year-old individual. The hair does whip up in a somewhat similar way, but I'll say I have some degree of skepticism concerning this picture. And we round it out with Mother Scherf, who I'm presuming is Prescott's mother. If this guy is like 36, this guy like 16, if the photo's from 1938, then I would say that this is a woman appearing to be in her 50s to early 60s, which would fit in perhaps being this individual's mother. But it's important to note that she has the given name of Flora Sheldon Bush, and that she allegedly passed in the year 1920 at the age of 48. That data confirmed at this find a grave entry, wife of Samuel Prescott Bush, grandmother of former U.S. President George H.W. Bush. And so if this woman were still in the world of living at that time, that would make her about 66 years old, and will suggest an illegitimate death versus alternative family history. Just so you can compare the imagery, both heavy-set women, not completely dissimilar. And so now moving to Oto Skorzeny, we were told that this is from his funeral in 1975, and this is his photo. So a few takeaways about the courageous Skorzeny is that he had a scar across the left portion of his face. He was a rather tall man, a manly man with a heavy brow, prominent nose and jaw. Here he is pictured with Hitler. So we have this photo of an allegedly much more elderly Skorzeny. It was taken 8/27/97 at the McDonald Lodge in Glacier National Park, Montana. Supposedly, Adolf Hitler himself is sitting with the blue shirt and hat there. Suppose I should point out this is a rather tall man here. You see the type of swoop of the head of these men in these images. Note the ear and the nose tend to grow throughout life. Photo's very grainy, but I would say that very full cheeks are noted here and here. Cheeks are very full there. This is a sideways picture, so difficult to tell. Interestingly, the sideways picture is just revealing the right and not the left, so you're not really able to confirm the scar. Could this be a staged photo? My source expresses that this man, Reinhard, allegedly, and this man, worked together to take out Nikola Tesla. And so in this, I learned that pen name Eric Orion is really Eric Borman. And we get this claim by Skorzeny on his deathbed. Among a number of other highly significant revelations, Borman heard from Skorzeny that he had personally suffocated Nikola Tesla January 6, 1943, assisted by fellow N. Reinhard Gehlen. Tesla was then 86 years old. It was explained to me by my source that essentially Scherf Sr. functioned in the capacity of passing information back to Germany, likely leveraging his position by selling access to Tesla's work. And so a derivative piece of information related to the date of Tesla's death is that 4,070 weeks after he had died led to a very important date, and that date happened to also be 936 months from his death. And this number was brought up to me as being important because of Tesla's emphasis on the 369 magical concept. And I'm sure you already know that date was January 6, 2021. The same date spelled out by politicians in a similar vein to the September lucky date. So the January 6th date's the date patsies and other rapscallions encouraged people to enter the Capitol. It was also pointed out to me that the Bush family had some evidence of being aware of a kinness or similarity to the Curious George story, as during the 2003 Christmas season, an image of the monkey on a ball with a man in a yellow hat is pictured in front of a painting of Barbara Bush. That is George Sr.'s wife. Haha, you thought this was the most controversial alleged association. The source also brought up to me the plot of the second Curious George book, Curious George Takes a Job. The book picks up where the first book ends, George living in a zoo until he gets a key from a zookeeper and escapes his cage.
A world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle.
In a city, George sneaks into a restaurant where he is caught in the kitchen eating a pot of spaghetti and forced to cook and wash the dishes, but he does a splendid job. As a reward, the cook takes him to meet an elevator man who gives him a job as a window washer for a tall apartment building. The story goes on to describe how he gets in trouble and eventually gets injured. The incident makes the front page of a local newspaper, and the man with the yellow hat sees this, and so he contacts the hospital to claim him. So the man in the yellow hat operates as a type of handler for George. And so it was also pointed out to me that President Lyndon Baines Johnson had an image association with his hat, with his letters inscribed upon it.
When LBJ left Washington to go home, he was very unpopular. The war was at it. The anti-war feelings were running very high. Your dad was the only Republican that went out to Andrews Air Force Base to see LBJ off as he headed back to Texas. And I understand that, was it earlier this year when President Obama...
Was that evidence of a deeper relationship than what we may have been allowed into publicly? And so here's your presidential bully, Johnson, with his iconic hat. Another instance of him there. Another instance there. And him playing mind games on MLK. And so to try to wrap this all up and tidy it up, hopefully in a manner as clean as Forrest Gump's haircut, I'll state to you that this given movie was relayed to me as being a type of totem that symbolically encapsulates one element of the paradoxical reality story that we're living. So the book Curious George made its premiere in the year 1947, the same year the CIA was established via the National Security Act of 1947. The life is like a box of chocolates concept could possibly be a message to us that the goal of the technology used to create the reality shifts was perhaps to muddy the natural progression and determinism a given timeline would be expected to take when all actions of every life form are taken into balance, like a large mathematical equation. But if you throw wrenches at certain points in time, it becomes difficult to know the exact trajectory a civilization will travel. Thus, you never know what you're going to get. You may say the Mandela Effect is there to increase the possibility of an ultimate pathway of victory for the unscrupulous predators of our society. Or you could say it's a monkey wrench to help allow for a pathway out of any type of totalitarian hell that gets created. Well, that concludes my initial thoughts on this series of discussions I've had with this individual a few weeks ago. If any additional revelations are forthcoming, I may make additional parts. There was other information that I did not put into video, but I just wanted to make sure I encapsulated elements that could be easily understood. That's all for now. Peace. I'd like to again give credit to IH, who introduced me to a lot of this information.